All right. We just introduced two different formats of arithmetic equations. This first one, if you notice, the outline looks kind of the same. You've got the two parts of our point, right? If you look, this first number, is that the input or the output? The output. And then that's the input that matches with it, right? And then this is the common difference, right? Do you see how those both, like, they kind of always have the same pieces in the same places? So we can generalize this into kind of an outline that'll work for a point slope equation, which is what we said this guy was called. So that's one type, is a point slope equation. And the best way we can make it so that you remember this and make it useful is basically to kind of give you an outline. So if you want to use a point slope equation, you can get the right things in the right places. What happened with both of our ones here is to get the answer, we took our output, right? And then I'm going to put a plus or a minus because for sequences that go up, we add, and for sequences that go down, we subtract. So it could be either one, right? So we're going to put that just to remind you, it could be either one. And then the next thing was dealing with the common difference, right? Or the slope. I'm going to say slope, and then right below it, I'll say common difference, just to remind us that those are the same thing. Common difference. And as the slope times, I should use a times dot since I'm about to put an x, times x minus whatever input we are starting with, right? So if we're starting at an input of 1, we add a 1 there. And if we had an input of 2 that went with the output, then we had a 2 there, minus the input. And then just a reminder, that input and that output are a coordinate. Okay, so that's our point. Which is why it's called a point slope equation, because of the pieces we use to put it together. That looks exactly like our equations that we've been writing based off the expanded table, because this whole time you really have been making point slope equations. Like I said, we're just going back and we're saying, oh, by the way, this thing you've been doing, it has a name, follows a pattern. That's point slope equation. The other one, slope-intercept equation. And this one we mentioned before. I'm actually going to flip back. I'll put it back in just a minute. We had mentioned this equation when we did our arithmetic sequences cheat sheet. We said that generally speaking, an explicit formula for an arithmetic sequence is going to be the common difference times the input plus or minus the first term. But what we're clarifying now is, oh, by the way, in order for this to work, your first term has to be at 0. So we're kind of refining this a little bit and saying this works if your first term is at 0. So I'm going to rewrite that. And we can label the parts of it. This is going to be your slope or your common difference. We labeled it up there so that you remember those are the same. This is going to be your first term at 0, also known as the y-intercept, because it always shows up on the y-axis on the graph, right? So y-intercept, and then below that we'll put a little note that that actually is the output at 0, right?
Right.
So if you're not looking at a table, or if you're not looking on a graph, it's just going to be whatever your output is at 0. Slope-intercept equation because of slope-intercept. So the names of both of these equations are based off of the pieces or the things that you're using to build the equation with, which makes it a little easier to remember the names and which one's which.